Creatures of the Night, it's your girl Tati. Let's talk about Dark Side of the Ring Season 6, Episode 3, Big Van Vader. If you're looking to watch Dark Side of the Ring, especially the new season, you would have to tune into Vice TV. They're on at Tuesdays at 10 Eastern. If you are a wrestling fan, or if you're not even a wrestling fan, it's a really great show to get to know about some of these events or wrestlers throughout pro wrestling history. This episode I was looking forward to. When you think of one of the most influential big men to be in the ring, Vader is absolutely it. He is manly, beefy, he's stiff, he's violent, and also very agile, which is something that you don't think of when you see a guy who's over 400 pounds, 6'5", and he did moves that you wouldn't even believe a man his size can do. Definitely one of those influential wrestlers to have bigger men look like, hey, I can do anything in the ring. For this episode, we had Mick Foley, Jim Ross, Vader's son. We also had the legendary Stan Hansen, Jim Cornette, Gerald Briscoe, and we also had Vader's wife. And also, I'll be referring to Vader by his real name, which is Leon White. He was born in California. He lived in a violent home where there was abuse and alcoholism. And he had to grow up fast and be more of a responsible figure in the home, especially when he had younger siblings as well. They even talked about how when he was 12 years old, he was home alone with his sister. And these men break into the house and they're afraid. So they ran all the way to the bar that they knew that their grandfather was at. And he was just like, look, I can't be bothered. I'm over here drinking, having a good time with the fellas. Here's where the shotgun is at. If anybody tries anything funny, shoot. And this is just one of those things to let you know like how intense things were in terms of not just his upbringing, but also living in a dangerous area in California. Now, Leon did go on to play football. He played football for university, and he also played football for the NFL for the LA Rams. However, due to injury, he was not able to continue to play football. This is like a reoccurring thing where things didn't work out in football. I got injured. I'm going to get my shit rocked for a living, which is so interesting to me. Now he goes on to Denver and he decides that, hey, he's going to be a wrestler, and he meets Bruiser Brody. Brody looks at him and he's like, well, what the fuck you doing here? And he's like, hey, I want to be a wrestler. He was intimidated. Who would not be intimidated being in the presence of Bruiser Brody? And, you know, they gave him an opportunity to wrestle. And here he is wrestling in the AWA with Stan Hansen and Bruiser Brody. And with him being able to wrestle with these guys so early in his career, this is where he adopts this very stiff way of wrestling. And even though it wasn't something necessarily that he liked it to begin with, it's something that he didn't complain about, and it's something that he took throughout his career, and it's something that, you know, other wrestlers know him to be in terms of his style in the ring, and that was an issue when it came to people wrestling with him. Now he moved on to go to Japan and become really successful. I love this show. I really love this show. I really feel like they kind of brush aside a little bit in terms of wrestlers' time in Japan. I wish they would make it a point to talk a little bit more about that, especially in this case where Vader, I believe, his time within, being in Japan and also in WCW was way more successful than his time in the WWF. So I wish they talked about it a little bit more, but he went over there, he became successful. He also... he goes to New Japan after spending some time at All Japan Pro Wrestling. He goes to New Japan and he goes against the Antonio Inoki. And Inoki is pretty much Jesus on earth in Japan, or just within the Japanese wrestling world. And he goes and faces him and beats him. It had taken first of all, he rarely lost. And it had been quite some years had passed before he actually lost a match. So now here comes Vader coming in with this big ass mask. He's huge, he's tall, and he's just this character that especially people in Japan have never seen before. So it's quite a spectacle, but they're not expecting for him to actually come in there and beat him, even though he looks the part. Now he beats him. The episode doesn't actually talk about this particular thing, but after that match, it actually turned into a riot. Fans came out there, staff came out there, people got into the ring, and it got so bad that New Japan was banned from this venue for I want to say a year or so. They didn't talk about this, but they should have talked about it just so you can feel the sheer presence of what Vader was like in Japan. Now, he is successful. He even, I believe, 3 times won the IWGP Heavyweight Championship, which is a big motherfucking deal. And I just wish they talked a little bit more about things like this, because I feel like more people spend too much time talking about his time in WWF, which was not as successful. Now, he has a, I would say famous, well, infamous match with Stan Hansen in a Tokyo Dome where Stan Hansen, I don't even think they mentioned this part, but Stan hits him while he has a mask on and it breaks his nose. And then he takes off the mask and I believe he hits him again, and that somehow pushes the eye out of his socket, and he takes off the mask and you can see around his eye is purplish blackish, and he just pushes the shit back in, and we just gonna keep fighting. This is Vader we're talking about. And just to see all these things were happening way before he even came on to WCW, WWF, this guy was a big motherfucking deal. The fact that he would be able to just do something like that and just continue, is a huge deal. Now, after that match specifically, tape traders are shipping these tapes all over the damn world, and everybody's getting a look at what the hell is going on. They're seeing Vader, especially maybe for the first time, and JR gets a whiff of who is Vader and showing some interest in having him. However, we do have him going over to WCW. Now, he does have somewhat of a good run over there as well. I do feel like in terms of how he looked, how his presence was on screen, was a hell of a lot better than in WWF. He was able to do TV roles. One of my favorite was when he was on Boy Meets World. Boy Meets World, that was my shit growing up, and I lost it when he was on that show. I was just like, holy shit, can't believe he's on here. He's also had some small roles in movies and things like that. And they were able to, he was not just popular in wrestling, but you saw him doing some of these roles outside of that. And while that brought money into the home and made the family live a little bit more comfortable, that also meant he was spending less time at home, less time of getting to learn and love his son. And the times that he was home, let's say if the son was participating in some sports activity, wherever they went, he outshined his son in whatever they were doing. Everybody's coming to get autographs and pictures, and he would stay in character and making a spectacle when things should really be focused on what his son is accomplishing. And it was really hard for him to switch off his character and just being Leon White, a father. With Leon working as stiff as he did, many wrestlers did not like working with Leon due to alleged injuries, and even newcomers did not like to face him. Whenever they were told that they were going to face Vader, they'd be like, deuces, I don't know about this wrestling thing anymore. Now, in one particular match that I think, well, a lot of people may know about, was against Joe Thurman. Joe at the time was 20 years old. They even got him for the show to talk about what happened. He was 20 years old and he had big dreams on becoming a professional wrestler. He's in WCW at this time and he is going to face Vader. Before the match, Vader says, look here, bitch, I'm going to squash you and then I'm going to hit you with a power bomb. You good with a power bomb? And he's like, yeah, I'm good with it. Now he gets into the ring and the first thing that Vader says to Joe is, you better jump, motherfucker. And at first I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And he says that there was something about him that shifted, where the Vader that he saw prior to that match, prior to them getting to the ring, was different from the Vader inside the ring, which at first I was just like, well, that's how it is, right? your character in the ring and yourself outside the ring. And he was just like, this was just so different, and it just seemed like whatever they discussed was just outside the window, and he became violent with him in the ring, being this Vader character. Now, after him, Vader giving him a power bomb, he is injured and he is feeling numbness, and to the point that he is not even able to feel his legs. The referee's like, "Are you okay?" And Vader, who gets barely on top of him for the pin, doesn't even touch him to pin him. Referee counts 3, referee's checking on him, and Vader's just like, "Hey, are you okay?" Now they end up taking him to the hospital. He broke his back in 2 different places, and he was temporarily paralyzed. And after getting treatment while in the hospital, he is told that he'll never be able to wrestle again. And Vader comes to the hospital and asks him how he's doing, and Joe cuss him out, his mama out, his great granddaddy out, to the point where he's just upset about what happened. And that's the first time I think throughout this episode we get a chance to see like how much of an emotional person that Leon was. He was so emotional, obviously, about injury, a life-altering injury like that to Joe. And you can really see how emotional Joe is talking about what happened to him, because that cost him his dream. With a situation like that, obviously being an accident, many wrestlers are just like, "I don't know about working with Vader. I don't want to get hurt." Now, with something like this, you would think that, okay, we're gonna move past this and go another direction. Instead, for WCW, just like, this is good, because now we can take what really happened here and make more of a monster out of Vader. So he's now even become a bigger heel. They're bringing up this injury that poor guy had on the show during promos, and he is kind of not, seeming sad about it, pretty much like, well, that guy deserved what he got and whatnot, pretty much making him play into this monster who didn't care about what happened to that poor guy. Now, he ends up getting into a feud with Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan is, well, you know what, I'm not going to get into that. And he is feuding with Hogan. Both of them have big-ass egos, and you know how Hogan is. Hogan was... even at times where Vader is supposed to go over, Hogan was just doing his own thing and kind of making Vader look stupid on camera, and it just became a back and forth thing with the two of them. Now, here we have Paul Orndorff is one of the producers, and WCW was just giving jobs to anybody at that point. And he calls up Leon, and he's just like, "Hey, we about to do an interview. We're going to need you on set." Now, Vader's like, "All right, in a minute, I'll be there." Then Paul's like, "Get your fat ass over here right now so we can do this interview." Now, Vader's just like, "Well, who the fuck you talking to?" And they get into it physically. Now, this was all WCW needed to be like, all right, now we can get his ass out the door because of this physical altercation. Now, all these promotions are hearing about what happened, and rather that being a bad thing, that's when JR just like, we're going to scoop on in and swoop him up and take him to the WWF. He goes to the WWF, and it's interesting how time and time again we see wrestlers having a very successful careers before coming to the WWF and then becoming watered down. And that's one of those things that happened to Vader, unfortunately. This was a big man who had that attraction in terms of, oh, who is that? He's a monster heel that people love to see. And I don't think that translated well within his time in WWF. Big issue with that is Vince McMahon and this type of favoritism where it's like, if you don't have to look, if you don't have what I dream of my dream man to be, then we don't really got much for you to do. And I think that maybe from the very beginning, Vince McMahon kind of sort of gave up and was just like, we're just giving out contracts. We'll see what happens. Now, things don't work well with his time. He is getting several injuries, and he's gaining a lot of weight. They even sent him to a weight loss facility with Yokozuna And instead of them losing weight, they gained weight together because they're just eating whatever the fuck they want. Like, there really wasn't no rules and regulations at this facility, but he's still getting in the ring and still doing what he's doing, but he's putting more pressure onto his body being as big as he was in the ring. Now he gets into a feud with Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels, the cute, sexy baby face coming in. Everybody and your grandma is just in love with this man. And this is absolutely Vince McMahon type when it comes to men. Now he is getting this push out of this world at this point. And Vader's supposed to be the big heel in the situation. And they're not seeing eye to eye, whether it's in the ring or if it's backstage. And HBK is complaining left and right about certain things when it comes to Vader. One of those things being about his body odor, saying, hey, if he's going to be in the ring with me, he's going to have to wash his gear every time he come and fight with me. And for a quick second, I was like, well, you know what? I could understand. Maybe I wouldn't want to be wrestling somebody who's smelly. But it seemed like at that point, he is just nitpicking at things. They end up having a match at SummerSlam where HBK goes to the top rope and he's supposed to give Vader a elbow drop, but instead he ends up landing on his feet and he ends up stomping on Vader's head because apparently Vader was supposed to move when Shawn delivers that elbow drop, and I guess mid-air he realized, okay, he's not moving, and he gets upset and he ends up kicking him in the head. And this is just one of those things where he's just like, you know what? I'm not dropping no title to no Vader. Vader ain't ready to be a champion up in here. Whatever it was that he had to say to get Vince McMahon to keep him away from winning any championships within the WWF. Now, things get bad for Vader. He is, demoted down to the card. He's still a star, but not good enough. Things get worse when they end up doing an international tour. They end up going to Kuwait, where they're supposed to be doing this interview for, I guess, an interview show. I'm not sure exactly what the show was, but Vader and my baby, The Undertaker, they end up going onto this show. And according to Vader, he is told that, hey, when you go out there, be this big monster, flip the table, lose your shit and everything. And what happens is that he grabs that man by the tie, and the guy looks like he's fearing for his life. And he ends up getting arrested, and he's in house arrest for about, I believe, 2 weeks. Now, he could have gone to jail and been in jail for God knows how long. But once that had happened, he was really upset because apparently, according to Leon, they had voice clips of him throughout the show. And he's explaining that they did not tell the host what he was going to do. And, there's just a miscommunication when that happened. And when that ended up happening, Vince McMahon said, you know what, we packing our shit and we getting the hell up out of here, but we leaving Vader over there in Kuwait. He can deal with that. And that was just one of those things that spiral a downfall for him in WWF. So from a mental and physical standpoint, things are not looking good for Leon. He's at the point where he is taking up to 8 Percocets a day, all types of painkillers just to get through. He's still working, but it's not the way it used to be. He's going out there and he's losing to some of these young and up-and-coming stars. And his career is just not looking like what it should be in terms of what someone like Vader should have been, especially in the WWF, in comparison to what he's been able to accomplish outside of that company. Now, once his son goes to college, his wife is just like, you know what? The baby's gone. I'm going to be gone too. And she ends up leaving because she's tired of how the drugs and everything made him so much worse. She talks about, this is an interesting thing that I've seen on other episodes as well, where the ex-wives or the wives, they talk about how they went through abuse without using any triggering words, without actually saying he hit me, or like, as somebody who's been in the shoes of abuse, I know when a woman's saying I've been abused without saying I've been abused. So it's really interesting to hear her talk about it without ever saying it. So I thought that was interesting. The son leaves, then she decides to leave, but they're still in contact with each other. He ends up going to Japan to wrestle, and unfortunately, he didn't know he had diabetes and ended up getting into a diabetic coma, and then he ends up getting congestive heart failure, and it was so bad the doctors was like, hey, we need to operate as soon as possible. Unfortunately, he ends up getting pneumonia, and it doesn't take too long before they have to put him in a medically induced coma. When he wakes up, his son is taking care of him. They become a little bit more closer than what they were previously. And unfortunately, about a month and a half after, it was the day after Father's Day, his son was leaving the hospital. And, he told his son, hey, I love you. And he's like, oh, I love you too, Dad, I'll be back. And then he calls his son later on that night, thanking him for everything that he's done. And unfortunately, that was the last time he ever heard his father spoke. This was a really, really great episode. Like I said, I wish they touched a little bit more. And this is Dark Side of the Ring, sure, but I wish we could hear a little bit more about his success within pro wrestling. He's definitely one of those influential figures when you think about some of the biggest men to have been in this sport. Like if you are a guy his size or even half the size and you're thinking that you cannot be successful in pro wrestling, think again. There are men like him, men like Bam Bam. These guys, you see them and you're just like, holy shit, I can do that too. And I wish he would have had a much more successful time on a bigger, grander stage like WWF. And unfortunately, that did not happen. Next week, we do have an episode on Tony Atlas. Tony Atlas is one of my favorite legends. I love hearing him talking about things. He seems to be really honest to me, and I can't wait to hear how his life and career played out according to his eyes. So I'm glad that will be the next episode. You guys, thank you so much for watching my review. I'll be back next week with another episode on Dark Side of the Ring. See you guys then. Bye.